Hello hockey fans and welcome back to another video. It may not seem like it nowadays, but enforcers have played a big part in shaping the National Hockey League that we all know and love. The role is practically extinct in today's game, but to a lot of fans, the hard-knuckled fighters of years gone by have played as important a part in the league's history as the Gretzkys or the Lemieux. After all, you have to drop the gloves if you want to earn a Gordie Howe hat-trick, and he's one of the best players ever. Seeing players rack up hundreds of penalty minutes in a single season has been a pretty common occurrence in decades prior, as these role players look to commit anything from a minor penalty all the way to a fight or a game misconduct in the hopes of setting a new career high of time spent in the sin bin. However, one defenceman would figure out just how many penalty minutes a single player could receive in just 20 minutes of play. This is the story of Randy Holt and the 67 penalty minute period. Before we begin, I just want to mention that almost 80% of you who have watched my videos this month have not subscribed to my channel, so if you do enjoy this video and you want to see more like it in the future, consider hitting that subscribe button. It would really help me out a lot, folks. But anyways, on with the video. In order to tell this penalty-filled tale, allow me to take you back to March 11th, 1979. The Los Angeles Kings had arrived at the Spectrum Arena in Pennsylvania in order to take on the Philadelphia Flyers late in the 78-79 NHL season. One of the players suiting up for the Kings that night was defenseman Stuart Randall Holt, known as Randy for short, a former third-round pick by the Chicago Blackhawks in the 1973 NHL draft, who was acquired by the Kings earlier in the season. Though he had only recently earned a full-time spot in the NHL, having spent several seasons bouncing between the bigs and the minors, Holt was quickly earning a reputation as one tough customer. In his 4 seasons before joining LA, Holt had racked up 369 penalty minutes in just 112 regular season games, including 229 penalty minutes in just 48 games with the Cleveland Barons during the prior 77-78 season. If you thought that was a lot of minutes though, Holt had managed to register 411 penalty minutes in the minors during the 74-75 season alone. Yeah, the guy liked to fight. Having put up 4 points and 80 penalty minutes in just 22 games early in the 78-79 season with the Vancouver Canucks, Holt was traded to the Los Angeles Kings on New Year's Eve. The Kings decided to acquire Holt as they wanted to add some muscle to their roster that could help protect their team's star players, such as Marcel Dion, Dave Taylor and Butch Goring. As you might expect, Holt's orders to flex his enforcer muscles and protect his new team's best players would make his move to California a rather exciting affair, as the former third-round pick would record 129 penalty minutes in just his first 28 games with the Kings. As Holt got ready for his mid-March matchup against the Flyers, he knew he would have his work cut out for him. Philadelphia were in the heyday of their Broad Street Bullies era, and a player like Holt was bound to have a busy night, either protecting the Kings star players from the Flyers' tough guys, or dealing out some stone-cold justice of his own. What neither team could have predicted though, was that by the end of the evening, Randy Holt would write his name into the NHL's history books. As the puck was dropped and the game got underway, the two teams would waste little time getting acquainted. A fight broke out just 20 seconds in between Bert Wilson and Ben Wilson. Philadelphia's Bill Barber would open the scoring 4.5 minutes in, whilst Randy Holt would receive his first penalty of the game roughly halfway through the period, sitting in the sin bin for 2 minutes due to a holding minor. Then, 14 minutes and 58 seconds into the first, Holt would see his first real action of the night, as he dropped the gloves with Flyers enforcer Frank Bathe. Bathe would engage in this altercation with Holt, since the Kings defenseman had punched Flyers forward Blake Dunlop in the head, and Bathe wanted to teach him that hits like that don't fly in Philly. Once the fight was over and the two combatants were sent to the penalty box, Holt would receive 15 penalty minutes due to being given a fighting major and a 10-minute misconduct penalty, meaning he had already racked up 17 penalty minutes in just 15 minutes of actual game time. However, Holt's night was far from over. Exactly 5 minutes after the fight, Holt left the penalty box having served his time for the fighting major, and immediately dropped the gloves with Bathe again, throwing punch after punch until the officials got over to them and restored order. Though the two fighters should have then been sent to their dressing rooms as there was just 2 seconds left to play in the period, the officials instead decided to put Holt back in the penalty box until the buzzer sounded. As Holt sat in the sin bin again and began to untie his skates, King's teammate Bert Wilson skated past the penalty box and let Holt know that the Flyers were planning to get him at the end of the period, so Holt retied his laces and got ready to go back to work. Once the final 2 seconds ticked off and the first period came to an end, Holt stepped back onto the ice and headed for the locker room. Before he could get there though, Flyers forward Paul Holmgren skated up to him and told him that he had to pay for embarrassing the Flyers in his 2 prior fights. With that, the gloves were dropped again and Holt engaged in his 3rd fight of the game. At this point, the two teams hopped over their respective benches and each player looked for a dance partner from the other team, where they then had the choice to start throwing some punches of their own or hold on to their opponent as to not allow them to join another scrap and outnumber one of their teammates. Not long after his 3rd fight began, Holt was able to overpower Holmgren, make him bleed pretty badly, and prompt him to call it quits on the battle. Holt was then immediately approached by Bob Mad Dog Kelly, who also wanted a piece of the King's defenceman, but after Holt told Kelly, quote, "On the best day you ever lived, you couldn't beat me," Kelly quickly second-guessed his chances and skated away. Okay, that was pretty badass on Holt's part, I've got to admit. After the fighting had subsided and the two teams finally left the ice, a grand total of 352 penalty minutes were handed out. As you might expect, a large number of those minutes were given to none other than Randy Holt. Because of his actions at the end of the period, Holt was ejected from the game and received a fighting major, a misconduct, and a triple game misconduct, which combined for 45 penalty minutes. This meant that after just 20 minutes of play, Randy Holt had managed to record a holding minor, 3 fighting majors, 2 10-minute misconducts, and 3 game misconducts, for a total of 67 penalty minutes. 67 penalty minutes in 1 period of play. How is that even possible? In doing so, Randy Holt would set a new NHL record for the most penalty minutes handed out to one player in a single NHL game, surpassing the previous record of 48 set by defenceman Jim Dory in 1968. For context, the closest that anyone has come to this record in the 41 years since is both Brad Smith in 1986 and Reed Lowe in 2002, who are tied for second place with 57 penalty minutes, a whole 10 minutes less than Holt's performance that night. With a new NHL record in his back pocket, Holt would be forced to remain in the Kings' locker room for the remaining 40 minutes of the game, as the Flyers would take a 6-3 victory over the Kings. Once the game was over, Holt would discover that he had been suspended by the league for 3 games due to his actions against the Flyers, meaning he would miss games 69, 70 and 71 of the Kings season against the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Montreal Canadiens and the Atlanta Flames respectively. 11 days later, Holt's suspension would be up and he would play the rest of the year with the Kings, finishing the season with 6 points and 202 penalty minutes in just 36 games with Los Angeles. These numbers, combined with his stats from Vancouver, would bring his season totals to 10 points and 282 penalty minutes in just 58 games. Yep, Holt was a tough customer, alright. Following the conclusion of the 78-79 NHL season, Holt would play 1 more year on the Kings roster, where he scored just a single point, but posted 94 penalty minutes in 42 games, before being traded to the Calgary Flames on June 6, 1980. The former third-round pick would then spend the next 56 games of his career with the Flames, scoring 5 points and recording 174 penalty minutes, before being traded for the 4th and final time of his NHL career on November 25, 1981 to the Washington Capitals. Over his next 2 seasons, Holt would suit up for the Capitals and find a way to spend even more time in the penalty box than in years prior, scoring 16 points and posting 525 penalty minutes in just 123 games. Did Washington's sin bin have heated seats or something? After his pair of seasons in the nation's capital, Holt would take his talents to one final team and spend the 83-84 NHL season with the Philadelphia Flyers. Because of course he would. These things really do write themselves, don't they, folks? On March 6, 1984, Randy Holt would take to the ice in his final NHL game, posting a plus-minus of -1 and recording 2 penalty minutes as the Flyers took a 5-2 loss against the New York Islanders. These stats would mean that Holt finished the 83-84 season having gone scoreless in 26 games with 74 penalty minutes on the year. Once the season had come to an end, Holt decided that it was time to call it a day on his career, so the 31-year-old officially announced his retirement from the National Hockey League. In 395 regular season games, split over 10 seasons with 7 different NHL teams, Randy Holt scored 4 goals and 41 points, whilst racking up a grand total of 1,348 penalty minutes. That's almost 3.5 penalty minutes a game. Oh, and he also posted 5 points and 83 penalty minutes in 21 playoff games too, just in case you thought he stayed out of the box during the postseason or something. Though he may not have been a star in the league, and he was nowhere near winning any trophies, when Randy Holt took to the ice against the Philadelphia Flyers in March of 1979, he not only cemented his reputation as one of the toughest players in the league, he earned his place in the hockey history books. Given the lack of fighting in the game today and the increasing importance of limiting penalties, Holt's record will likely stand for years to come. After all, it would take some sort of enforcer's miracle just to beat Holt's record, and he did it against the Broad Street Bullies. He may not have been the best, he may not have been there the longest, but Holt sure is a player to remember. And that's the story of the 67 penalty minute period. What do you guys think about Randy Holt's record-setting game or his career as a whole? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Antti Hannanen, Chris Gadsby, Connor B, John Plomin, Jordan Whitehead, Paul Mallia, Roman from London, The Legacy and Worthless Pieces, as well as a huge thank you to Let's Talk Hockey for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.